Democratic Confederalism sprang out of the mind of Abdullah Ocalan in the later decades of the Cold War. Ocalan, a Kurdish revolutionary from southeast Turkey, originally followed in the footsteps of many revolutionaries of his day and subscribed to Marxist-Leninism as a blueprint for decolonization. However, decades in the trenches of liberatory struggle left Ocalan with an understanding that the material conditions of the Kurds were not similar enough to that of the Vietnamese or Cubans for Marxist-Leninism to be an effective ideology for liberation. Ocalan then, seeing how Kurdistan was split between four hostile nation-states, developed an ideological framework which would allow for Kurdistan to be liberated in spite of nation-state barriers. Previous Kurdish groups like the PKK and the KDP had fought against intensely oppressive foes like Saddam Hussein, whose Ba'athist party waged genocide upon the Kurdish regions of northern Iraq in the late 1980s. Their successes were minimal. With democratic confederalism, Ocalan and his followers found a new introspective and responsive way of not just fighting back better against the oppressive forces of Iran, Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, but also against the very system of liberal capitalism. In Abdullah Ocalan's pamphlet on democratic confederalism, he describes the ideology as a kind of self-administration of the people, in contrast to administration by the institutions of the nation's state, and also as a non-state political administration, or a democracy without a state. What this means is that opposed to the structure of the modern nation-state, where the state and the nation enter into a social contract with one another, where the nation or people of a territory grants the state the graces to rule over and administrate said people and territory through democratic republicanism, democratic confederalism structures democratic administering of the people from the bottom up. In short, states administrate, democracies govern. The various demographics of a shared territory form into federations based on each one's national character and work in tandem with one another through democratic means. Each nation of people, be they based on ethnic, religious, or even gender, work at a local level via multi-structured councils to discuss and dictate what happens in their communities, and then elect representatives to meet at larger conventions to be their voice in a confederation of each nation of peoples. Democratic confederalism is meant to function outside of a state. The thought process here is that the state is inherently oppressive. Ocalan says in his book, The Political Thought of Abdullah Ocalan, that the state continuously orientates itself towards centralism in order to pursue the interests of power monopolies. The opposite is true for confederalism. Not monopolies, but society is at the center of political focus. The heterogeneous structure of society is in contradiction to all forms of centralism. Distinct centralism only results in social eruptions. This posits that through a democratic confederalist structure, centralism in a nation-status form could not exist due to the internal contradictions which would develop if attempted. Monopolistic centralism, key to liberal capitalism, is de-incentivized. The modern nation-state, according to Ocalan, is the manifestation of bourgeoisie liberal capitalism. The nation-state manifested as a means for the growing bourgeoisie and middle class to gain a seat at the political table and to consolidate class power. Ocalan believes that the nation-state in its original form aimed at the monopolization of all social processes. Diversity and plurality had to be fought, in an approach that led to assimilation and genocide. It not only exploits the ideas and the labor potential of society and colonizes people's heads in the name of capitalism, it also assimilates all kinds of spiritual and intellectual ideas and cultures in order to preserve its own existence. It aims at creating a single national culture, a single national identity, and a single unified religious group. Failure to do such leads to internal division and strife. Thus, for a people such as the Kurds, who are spread across 4 nationalistic nation-states in West Asia, the nation-state can be viewed as inherently antagonistic. Democratic Confederalism rectifies these contradictions and offers a more coexistible governing ideological framework. The nature of Democratic Confederalism's structure as a bottom-up confederation of nations of people with democratic structures lends itself better to diverse territories without the need to dominate and assimilate. It is a system which also allows itself to be implementable within already existing nation-state structures, so as long as neither party vies for intervention in the other's affairs. This form of socio-political administration is not just a solution to the Kurdistan question, but also to the sectarianism and ethno-nationalism which has plagued the Middle East since the fall of the Ottoman Empire. When it comes to conflict between Jews and Palestinians, Sunni and Shia, Turks and Arabs, Christians and Muslims, Democratic Confederalism lends itself to rectifying international struggles of domination all across the region, in a sea of ethnicities and nationalities confined to arbitrarily drawn borders, a structure which allows for nations to maintain their authentic characters and also live alongside historically opposing peoples whose claims to territory and authority has driven conflict, war, famine, cleansing, and genocide to maintain their faith, tradition, culture, language, and everything else that comes with ethnicities and nations of peoples is a structure which is desperately needed. Democratic Confederalism, in the mind of Abdullah Ocalan, may be the medicine the Middle East needs in order to accomplish any lasting peace between all those who live there.